We're on. Welcome, everybody. Hi, welcome to the Hanukkah Erotica Book Club podcast. I'm Raizel, also known as Rachel, and I'm joined by my co-host and stepsister, Malya.
Hello.
Hi, Mal.
Hi, we're here.
Hi, everybody.
Yay.
Woo! We're so happy to be here. We're so happy you're here. And can you see us?
We are very low.
Should we switch to the higher chairs?
Maybe.
We should switch to the higher chairs.
Okay.
We're going to switch to the higher chairs.
Let's do that.
Give us a minute.
Yep.
We'll need another. How's that? Is that better? All right, let's start this one more time. Hello, everybody. We're so happy to be here. Thank you so much to the Bodice for having us.
Yes.
We are celebrating 2 years of the Hanukkah Erotica Book Club podcast.
Woo-hoo!
Which is amazing.
Amazing.
And so a little backstory of how this got started. When I tuck my oldest in, I often read, and I was scrolling through the Libby app. Some of us may use the Libby app to download books. I was scrolling through the Libby app 2 years ago, and all of a sudden I started getting served Hanukkah romances, a genre I really didn't know I needed. And at first, I was like, I need to write one. I don't know why that was my first instinct. So I started taking screenshots of the covers, and I started posting them to Instagram. Then I realized I need to just read one. So I started to read one, and I started to Instagram story one particular book.
But not just Instagram story, like underline, comment,
Yeah.
highlight. It was a full, like, deep dive.
Yeah, I was commenting.
Yeah.
And
I was lurking.
yes, Malya was lurking. People came out of the woodwork. From the woodwork, they came out.
Yeah.
A lot of people started DMing me, talking about the book. My Instagram messages were just, my DMs were blowing up. And Malya, my stepsister, was this, I'm really connecting to this material.
I was, like, sharing anecdotes from my own life.
And I felt like based on the book, our relationship, we should podcast about this. So we did. William for sure just thought that it was going to be one Zoom conversation that would be fun and enjoyable.
And that's why he agreed to produce it.
And instead, here we are 2 years later, celebrating 2 years. We were here last year at the Bodice. Some of you were here. Last year, we read 8 Kinky Nights by Zan West.
Mm-hmm.
And here we are. We're going to talk about a book tonight. We're very excited about it. But before that, we just kind of want to catch up.
Yes. First of all, I hope people are enjoying the kiddish at the front. Kiddish cookies are there. And, you know, it's a big deal because last year we ordered a big kiddish cookie platter for this event. But this year,
Well, something happened that literally was a plot line out of one of the books that we read, which is like really bananas. But we read a book by Jean Meltzer called Kissing Kosher about 2 Jewish bakeries, rival bakeries, Babka in Brooklyn, and one of them had a fire. Maybe the enemy set the fire.
I think
there
that was
something
the
that happened.
suspicion. I don't know
Okay.
if that was borne out.
There was a fire in this kosher bakery in the Jean Meltzer book that we read. Zadie's, the bakery that made our platters last year, had a fire. So anyway, I made the platters. Don't they look good?
They look great.
Yeah, I'm really proud of them.
I am curious what types of kiddish cookies people prefer.
Yeah, I like to ask this. We asked this last year, but I like to know, we like to know your favorites. Does anyone have a favorite? Like if you go for that platter, what do you go for? Yeah. Yeah, the rainbow, yeah.
Rainbow's
A lot of
really
people go
good.
for the rainbow. Some people have an aversion to like the marzipan taste, so they avoid the rainbow cookie because also it's a cake. But, I understand. It's always there. We put it there. I know. It's Italian. But, there's a long history of Italian cookies and Jewish cookies. Brooklyn, peasant food. There's a connection. I've looked into it. They're also always kosher parov, so like there's for sure a connection. The Italian bakeries, they're aware. They know.
They're in on it.
They're in on it. They know. They know they're also at all Jewish events.
Yeah. I go for the Linzer tart. I think that's controversial because jelly's always controversial, but I just the 2 cookies for one. And
so I'm anxious to say this in front of my neighbors, but we have an annual cookie swap. Our neighborhood cookie swap was last week, and I kind of perseverate on what I'm going to make for like 364 days out of the year and then go for it. And for 2 years now, I've considered making a Linzer.
But you haven't gone for it.
No, so now I'm nervous about it because I'm probably going to next year, and now they know. It's okay.
I think it's like a high benchmark of a cookie.
You have to execute it right. It has to be really good. But the
ones you made this year looked really good though, and kind of fancy.
They were. They didn't rank high, but they were good. They were good.
They didn't rank high.
No, they didn't. There was a winner here in the audience for most original.
Wow, congratulations.
Most original pumpkin cheesecake cookie. Most original. Yeah, so wait, I'm so upset about something though that happened today that I feel like I need to share it before we kind of dive in, which is that earlier in the day, William, our producer, right here, Jewish Robot, was and my brother-in-law was he texted, "Can you ask your AV team at work for this wire? I need a specific kind of wire, 2 male sides," and then sends a picture of like a wire with 2 penises. And I didn't know that wires were gendered. It seems like when I talked about it at work today or to Malya and William, like some people do know that wires are gendered, and I had no idea. Like I wasn't on the AV team. I was like AV adjacent in high school because I was in theater but not talented, so I was like backstage, but I wasn't like on the AV team enough to know. I don't know about these wires, 2 male. And then I felt so weird asking Ed, our friend and the head of facilities at work, my colleagues here, so she knows, like, I was like, hey, I need a wire for tonight, but it says 2 male. And I felt really weird about it. And then I showed him the picture, which also felt like perverse. And then he handed me a 20-foot 2-penis wire. And I just like,
it's also so funny because when you texted back like 2 male, like 2 penises, I had this flashback to being 12 years old and my father, who's here, going into like PC Richard and Son with him and him asking for something with a male plug and then me saying, what is a male plug? And him explaining it in what I felt confident was earshot of the PC Richard and Son guy. And I was like, I just remember my level of embarrassment at that moment very clearly, and this whole conversation totally brought it back for me. So
when
that's just fun.
Yeah, and when William was like, tonight before you talk about the book, like you should do your general catch-up shtick, I was like, I have enough material for a full hour, so we're good. Like, we're good. Ooh. But apparently there's also a movement I learned today because I got, in the weeds. There's a movement to change the language and have gender neutral wire language, which honestly I'm an advocate for because I never want to talk about male wires ever again. It's too much for me.
What is the language? Do you know?
William might.
Okay. Oh. Okay, there you go.
There you go. Plug an outlet.
That seems mildly
to get it on the
right
mic
now too, honestly, but okay.
Yeah. So yeah.
Okay.
That's what happened today. We're so happy you're here. We're so excited. And today we're really celebrating something exciting for me. And if you are here because you're part of the romance reading community, you might also be excited about this. But I started reading romance a little less than 20 years ago. And when I started to read romance, I found an online community called Smart Bitches Trashy Books. And Sarah Wendell started this community. She started in January. It'll be 20 years. And it was a blog. It was a website. They had so many different features. They still have them, but one was like Help a Bitch Out, which is this section where you could be like, I once read this book. I found it in an airport. There was a tangerine sky. There was a farmer. The farmer was the farmer of a very specific kind of wood. I can't remember, but there was this one scene, and in the scene there was a dog, and they were kissing, and someone's like, I know that book. I read it also, and it's like a link to the random Harlequin. Like, it's called Help a Bitch Out, and it's so cool.
Because you could still exist?
Yeah.
That's amazing.
You can just be like, there was a book and this random thing happened, and there's like
right.
all these people that will just support you.
We discussed this early on because I remember I had when we talked about because I don't have a long history of romance novel reading. Rachel really brought me into this genre. But then once again, Rachel, it seems like it's a theme, triggers a flashback for me where I also, as like an early adolescent, went to like a Shabbat meal and my like friend's mom was like, "Oh, Malya, you like historical fiction. You should read this book I just read about this young Jewish woman in the Spanish Inquisition." She loans me literally the most explicitly sexual book that I've ever read in my life about like a Jewish woman who's like a Marrano and she's having like this affair with the like head inquisitor. And I was just like, oh my God, I can never see that mom ever again.
But when Malya told me about the book and she couldn't think of the name, I was like, oh, there's a feature on Smart Bitch's trashy book called Help a Bitch Out.
I haven't gone on it, but I need to follow up on that. Must do that.
Yes. So anyway, this community was started by Sarah Wendell about 20 years ago. Next month, it'll be 20 years. And then an offshoot of a podcast, which was Smart Podcast Trashy Books. There's almost 700 episodes. Like, so amazing. And for me, there was almost like an embarrassment at the beginning. Not shame's the wrong word, but just like romance. It's not serious. I feel funny talking about this thing that I love. But then Smart Bitches Trashy Books validated this. I'm like, no, you can be smart and educated and love romance. And it made me feel so good and so seen. But 10 years ago, Sarah Wendell wrote a Hanukkah romance because she said that she has a rule where she can't complain about the same thing 3 times without doing something about it. Which, by the way, if I had that rule...
I know. I was just thinking, like, that's a really intense rule. And I would talk 90% less, I think.
Like, if I had to do something every time I complained about something, the world would be an actually different place.
I'm sure.
Yeah. So she felt, because she is like really deep into the romance world, it's made it her whole life. She was missing this one, holiday romance was really big. Christmas romances was missing this one piece of Hanukkah romance and wrote Lighting the Flames 10 years ago. So we're celebrating 10 years of Lighting the Flames tonight, which I'm so excited about.
Really cool.
And one thing that Molly and I were kind of, summer came, our first year of doing the podcast. We started to read summery Jewish books. We started to think about the sexy Jewish experiences of summer. Camp came to mind, thinking about sleepaway camp. We read a sleepaway camp book. A few.
Yeah.
We feel like there could be more.
Totally.
And one thing that's amazing about Lighting the Flames is that it's about 2 people that met while working at a Jewish sleepaway camp, but they're coming back for winter camp.
So they brought the sexiness of Hanukkah
exactly
to the sexiness of camp.
Genius.
Kind of genius.
Genius.
Genius move.
So I'm really curious to hear what you think. Also, for those of you who don't listen, well, now you'll start to listen. But for those of you who haven't listened before, Molly and I don't really discuss much about the book before we dive in.
We try not
to at all.
In fact, in general, it's cut down on our texting outside of the podcast because if any of us gets more than like 2 sentences deep into anything, one of us is like, save it for the podcast. So
yeah, that's really true. So I'm dying to hear what you think of this book.
So here's what I think. For me, this book was a bit of like a slow burn. Like I started it and I was a little bit like, did we make the wrong choice? Because it felt, okay, especially compared to if anyone was here last year and read 8 Kinky Nights, that book like got so intense so fast and was also like about such a specific sort of like sexual subculture. This book felt like very vanilla at the beginning by comparison.
Oh, well, by comparison of 8 Kinky Nights, yes, for sure.
Right. Yeah. But it felt like I started to just be like, is there enough here? But then,
oh my God,
it really took off.
First of all, I hear you about 8 Kinky Nights because after 8 Kinky Nights, our friend Aaron was like, what are you going to do with the podcast now?
Right. He was like, you've gone to a new level.
You've gone to a new level with this book. Like, what's going to happen? I'm like, well, we're just going to keep reading books. Like, everything's going to be fine. This was last year. He was like shoveling herring in his mouth. And he's like, what are you going to do? Aiken, now where is it going to go? But okay, it's like, there's a lot here.
Do people miss the herring? Sorry. Last year we had herring at our had herring at our kiddish because I love herring and we had discussed it. We agreed that we could abandon the herring. I feel there's something missing.
Okay. You know what? God willing, we'll be back and we can change the catering situation.
Right.
I'm not missing the herring. Also, I'm not missing it.
Okay.
Or the oil. There was like a residue. I'm not missing it. Wait, but a side note, I'll tell you more later about my amazing conversation with Sarah Wendell, but she asked if she could send food tonight. How nice is that?
So sweet.
I'll tell you more later. But okay, so Genevieve and Jeremy are back at camp.
Yes.
They worked at camp for multiple summers, but now they're back. It's winter camp. They're the kind of camp friends that are absolutely best friends, but they only spend summers together. During the year, though, they're like commenting on each other's Facebook posts. It's explicitly mentioned.
Yes.
They're
this
commenting.
book has a lot of 2014 specific references that seem quite dated in an adorable way, but in a very like Frozen in 2014.
At one point, Jeremy sees something he wants, and he's like, "I can has," and like, do you remember that meme that was like, "I can has cheeseburger"? I literally like looked at what was that? A cat?
I don't know.
I don't understand it. I think I missed the joke. Like, I don't think I understand what was funny about I can has, and I didn't know what was funny about it in the book either. But I want to talk to you about that with like Jeremy's sense of humor and like general like. They're adorable.
How old are they? Can we
they're-
start with that?
Yes, I know. What do you think? Okay, so they've worked at camp, and now they're in the working world, like grad school working world, but they're young enough to be back at camp, but like those years are slowly dwindling.
But they're like post-college,
Yeah, post-college,
right?
like early 20s.
Okay. Is
Yeah.
this what's the
New adult.
new adult? Is this new adult?
Maybe just based on their ages. Yeah, new adult.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right. That's what I figured.
Yeah. New adults, like after young adult, early 20s. Okay.
Okay, but I did also feel sorry. I'm just jumping around now,
Please.
but I did also feel that they're being weirdly infantilized then in the camp context, which maybe that's a camp thing. Like you went to the camp as kids and then you were counselors. Now you're fully adults, but you're still sort of treated in this sort of childlike way in this context of
Because of the camp director?
Yeah, like the camp director is like telling them not to fool around.
Right, but they're just
And
like
I'm
adults.
like, that's why I was like, how old are they?
They were 20-somethings who worked at camp.
At
Yeah.
one point, he actively like came in the middle of the night to like check on them. That
Yeah.
just seemed creepy,
Yeah.
frankly.
Yeah. Scott was a little weird.
So I thought that there would be some kind of weird angle at the end where he wanted to like join the.
No, she's back
That
in
did
8
not
Kinky
happen.
Nights.
This was
No,
not that kind
no,
of
she's
book
back.
at
It
all.
was not.
I really
No.
thought there was, but that's what I'm saying. I was like, maybe I'm 10 years off about their ages. It
No.
felt like
They were in their early 20s. Like, I don't think they were 24 yet.
But the way he was treating them was weird.
because maybe they were like the counselors, and he felt protective.
They were adults.
Also, but like I think I know why. I think I have more intel about why he seemed that way, like almost fatherly.
Okay.
Because I learned later when I talked to Sarah about the book that Sarah met her husband Adam. They went to high school together, but Adam's parents were the directors of a sleepaway camp outside of Pittsburgh, a Jewish sleepaway camp, and he asked her to work at camp to run arts. This is like the true story.
That's very
And
cute.
so maybe Scott felt
then they got
fatherly,
married?
and then they got married.
Wow.
Like that's her husband.
That's very sweet.
But maybe he felt that way because in real life it was
Right.
his
The
dad.
camp director was his
was
actual
his actual dad.
I see.
Yeah, possibly that's why I felt
Okay.
that way.
I feel like
Anyway,
that shouldn't have been carried over.
but back to right, I get it. I agree. Back to Jeremy's like dorkiness though. I want to talk about Jeremy's dorkiness.
Okay.
I'm like not turned on by the nerdy way he talks. Like I'm turned off by but the thing is like he's like very into like camp missions and like we must steal the golf cart. It'll be epic. Like there's something about
Yeah.
there's something about how excited he is, and it's like it's kind of mean. It's like it's fun to be campy and like
he uses even like I felt like it was conjuring like Monty Python-esque like wench come
Yes,
with
a lot of
me
wench.
hence yeah
Yes.
like right that
and
type
there's
of
something
thing.
exactly. There was like my good lady. Like there's
Yeah,
something
he did a
about
lot
like
of
he
that.
played Dungeons and Dragons. I think it wasn't in the book, but like that's like he's giving Dungeons and
He
Dragons.
gave that for sure. Yeah.
And the thing is, at the same time, I feel weird saying that because like he was really nice, and also like there's a crazy whole thing in this book.
Yes.
I think we're thinking the same thing,
Of course.
which is that like
It's not that long of a book. I mean,
it's a novella. It's a novella. It's not like 170 pages. By the way, if we're not thinking the same thing, it's so weird.
That
But
would be
like
weird.
he is a mortician.
yes.
Okay.
Of course.
He went to mortuary school. He's a funeral director.
No, he has a family funeral business.
Yes, and like I'm very interested in this. I have met one person who told me like we're in the funeral directing business. Like my husband's in the funeral directing business. But I've never heard of anyone who went to mortuary. I can't even say it. I've never met a mortician. I've never met anyone who was on that path. I've
neither.
never seen it in a book. I've certainly never seen it in a romance or a rom-com.
Right.
And Oh, yes. There was a funeral director in Love is Blind, UK. UK, yeah. We're going to bring it back, though, to this conversation, Mom.
I'm not fluent in this.
Yeah, you are correct. There was a funeral director, but not a Jewish funeral director. Okay, yeah. In Love is Blind UK, correct. Thank you, Mommy. So, but I've never met one or I've seen one in a romance book. But anyway, the thing is, Genevieve's parents died.
Yes.
And he took care of everything.
This is where I also, that's very intense, but also just to inject a little bit of skepticism, like that's where I don't understand the whole thing where they were supposed to not really see each other outside.
The Hanukkah bottle, I had the same issue. How? Because the yahrzeit was on Hanukkah, which means the anniversary of their death was on Hanukkah. And I also felt like I really relate. She says in the book, like Genevieve's like, the yahrzeit's more important to me than the day on the American calendar, which like I really relate to because of the timing when my dad died was also near a Jewish holiday. So like the days between Yom Kippur and Sukkot to me are more meaningful when I remember that than like the random day in October. I understand when it's tied to a holiday. For her, it was tied to Hanukkah.
Right.
I get it.
Yeah.
Then how did he take care of the funeral?
That's what I'm saying.
I don't know. Sarah, are you watching? Like,
right.
I don't get it.
And he was like intimately there.
Yes.
Like, he knew about, there's this whole, in the kind of climactic scene is him describing to her like what it was like to like
be the showman.
And he sat with their bodies and what he felt and like she was in the hospital and how he felt like, very intense. She's weeping. It's just like it's cold. I did really like all the cold, like, and the feeling of that was very sexy.
The cold, the sleeping bags. I could smell the like damp wood in a great way. Yes.
So like you always felt like they wanted to snuggle up because it was so cold. So it was like that whole scene, like it really bonded them. But the continuity of that story, a little bit bothered me.
I'm dying to know, no pun intended, how that all worked out.
Right.
I really want to know. I don't get it. But the thing is also like this connection between like death and dying and like strong romantic connection. Like I also like, I get it.
Sure.
And probably we all do. But like hearing this experience of like him sitting with the bodies, being the showmare, like as you're reading it, you're like, this shouldn't do what it's doing. But maybe it should. I don't know. It's the cycle of life. It's really beautiful. It did it for me.
I also think like what you were saying about him giving Dungeons and Dragons, like I felt like it was like, yes, I imagined him as like a Mark Ruffalo in 13 on 30 type, like a nerd who got hot.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And like, this is her being like, oh wow, like he's not that nerdy Monty Python watcher anymore. He kind of is, but like I also see him as Mark Ruffalo as an adult. You know what I mean?
Yes, I really do. But also like from the very first page, like something comes up where she's like, these are your camp duties. And he's like, duties, haha. And I'm like,
right.
How am I going to think this guy's hot?
Right. So there was a lot of juvenile behavior.
Duties, haha. That like went on till the end.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Because that was him.
Right. No,
but then
totally.
he was always also like this deep, sensitive guy who like sat with her parents and like is very, like death is his business. Like he's very comfortable with the heaviness of life. Yeah.
Totally. No, it was really, I mean, that whole thing and all of camp and like, there's also this kind of like, why are we doing winter camp? And like, do we have to save Camp Meira? Like, is Camp Meira closing? And do we have to save it? How are we going to save it? How do you think? Color War.
Duh. Color War is the answer to everything.
Color War broke.
They single-handedly created Color War.
They single-handedly created it, led it, saved Camp Meira.
And also, what was that whole ridiculous camp director's plan? Like, it seemed like they were able to just completely make a new schedule and nothing was sort of missed or happened. So, like, I don't really understand.
No idea.
Yeah, what the original plan was for the week.
By the way, Lotta Lanyard wanted to ask you something. I have heard over the years that the word for lanyard's like regional, and then people in the Northeast call it lanyard, but that there's a lot, I see some nods. I'm curious what you've called lanyard. If it was lanyard, I get it. But anyone have other words they've used for lanyard at camper over there? Boondoggle? Syracuse, people from Syracuse and Buffalo. People from boondoggle. People from Syracuse, Buffalo, and Canada, I believe. Do we have any Canadians? Does anyone else have a word that they've used other than lanyard or boondoggle?
Do you know of other words?
Yeah, but as I'm thinking it sounds like it's a slur. Like I don't want to say it as I'm literally
Really?
like as I'm thinking of the word, like I don't think it's right.
What do you mean?
I can't say it. I should have done more research. Does anyone know the word I'm thinking of for lanyard? And am I right? Is it a word for lanyard? And also, is it something I can't say? Yeah, I'm right. Jonathan says yes.
Wow.
And someone else. Yep. Okay. There's another word for lanyard. You can Google it.
What's going on
Okay,
here?
but also, lanyard's not like riding a bike. I've tried again to like start the box stitch. It's not like riding a bike. It's very hard. You got to go into YouTube. Like, I don't know how we did all those stitches without YouTube. Sherry actually is probably who taught me how to do all of my lanyard, my friend. But yeah. Anyway, it's regional.
I'm not entirely sure a lot of what you were just talking about, but yes.
You know what
I'm
lanyard
sure
is,
I
right?
wouldn't remember.
Craft
Of
string?
course, no, and I knew how to
Okay.
do it, and I'm sure I would not remember a thing if I picked it up again. So
Yeah.
that I get, yes.
Yeah, for sure. Anyway, so I think they were planning on a lot of lanyard, and instead there's color war and all this stuff. There's ice sculptures of
They're awake 24/7, these two, like setting up each day of color war every night.
Yeah.
Like they're planting scavenger hunts.
Yeah.
They're like setting up races.
They're all very hot.
Like but he's really leading the charge. He has like endless energy, and
Yes.
he's really like leading
Yes.
the charge.
Yes. Yes.
And he's very committed.
Yeah.
Even though he's kind of revealed that he really can't come back to camp again because even as it is, like, it was a big deal to take off a week from his family's funeral business. And he keeps on, at one point, she doesn't know where he's gone. And he's like gone to the edge of camp to like get better cell service so he can see if there's any mortuary emergencies that he's missed.
Right.
Because he's left his like semi-incompetent brother in charge.
So he's never going to come back to camp again.
Right.
And
But he's
like,
still committed to
basically
saving it.
like the life goes out of her eyes when she realizes this.
Right.
Like the intensity. I love that though. Like the intensity when she realizes like this is their last summer. Winter. This is their last time together at
Right.
camp. That's it. Also, we forgot to tell you this one really important thing, which is that they kissed last summer.
Oh, right.
And then they skipped an entire summer because she went to Iceland and he was in mortuary.
She went to Iceland to do what? Study the Jewish community?
communities, yeah.
Of course. See, like, I also feel like, so I don't know, again, I'm newer to the romance genre, but I feel a little bit like some of these like soap opera-esque details are sort of a throwback to what I imagine are like old school romance novels. Like, and he's a mortician and she's coming back from Iceland. I don't know. It just feels very sort of like I'm watching As the World Turns or something.
Yeah, like
I
she
don't
could have
know.
literally, yes, she could have just had a corporate job and like not enough time off, but instead she was in Iceland.
Right.
Anyway, they kissed. Never talked about it. Went away. Didn't go back to camp the next summer. And then are seeing each other again at winter camp Meira.
Right.
Could you imagine? Actually, maybe. I could not imagine kissing someone and just never talking about it. That, to me, they were chatting. Well, not like, I don't know what. It wasn't text.
I don't know how much they were
emails.
chatting.
No, it was like there was a digital world of like comments on pictures.
Right. Yes.
They were in touch on the internet.
In 2014, there was a lot of conversing around comments on like Facebook photos.
Yes. They were doing that.
Right. But
They
that's
were
not
in
that
touch.
much. That's not that much in touch. I mean,
Okay, but they never talked about the kiss.
Right.
Then they were back at camp together, just like talking about like duties.
Right.
And then they're like, she's very attracted to him. She's also like seeing him in this new way. I think you're right.
Yes. It's also so funny because one of the things that she mentions and keeps mentioning is that he's grown a beard. And she's like really into the beard. And it's just so funny because I had a whole plan to point to William, my husband, and be like, I totally get the beard. But I came home yesterday and he had shaved. But I'll point to my dad who has a great beard also. So I get the beard.
Oh, for sure. For sure. Yeah, he had grown a beard. She was really into that. I mean, the camp stuff in general, like the folding chairs and like, again, like the smell of the wood and like the outside, there's like a whole shack of crap. She could just go get anything she needs. Also, because it's a Jewish camp, there's just like a whole area where they're like looking for the dusty old menorah, and she's kind of like, why would there be a menorah we've never celebrated? Like, no, there's tons of Judaica in velvet bags,
just like
hanging
abandoned
around.
Judaica.
It's like abandoned Judaica in camp. Like that made me laugh, and I don't know how realistic that is, but maybe it is.
Okay, so I'm also curious about this. Like, what kind of camp is this? Like,
Yeah.
what brand of Jewish camp are we in here?
I think it's like an unaffiliated, pluralistic, all people are welcome camp.
Okay.
Where like that's what I I've been doing a lot of Jewish camp research. Not for the book, for my personal life. And
you can bring that to bear here.
And I think that it's a camp that's like not affiliated, but kosher. So all are welcome.
Right.
And
they mentioned it's kosher food several times.
Yes.
Right.
But even by the way, the food at camp, like they love it so much. And like, you know. Also, winter camp, like they've had no kitchen. They have nothing up and running. Like it's even worse than
Also,
ever.
there's like the cook and her like ragtag band of foster children who all run the kitchen every year.
Yeah. Is that Nadine? Nadine?
Yeah. They're like, we can't close Camp Era. What about Nadine and her foster and all her like rainbow tribe?
Yeah.
Like, I don't know.
Yeah. Yes. A lot of people.
Yeah.
They couldn't close Camp Era. Anyway, that's the kind of camp I think it was. Like unaffiliated, not part of any movement. All are welcome. A lot of ruach, a lot of spirit. They did have davening every day.
I thought they had it three times a day.
That's they were like
intense.
morning prayer.
Is that an unaffiliated
morning
camp?
prayer.
I don't know. I felt like I couldn't put a finger on it because it seems sort of weirdly quite observant and Jewish intense, and then also weirdly sort of not. In other ways, like the kids' Hanukkah service that Jeremy led, it was like half of it was a kid talking about Christmas.
Right. No, I know. I think that in camps like this, like really all are welcome. Like many kids have interfaith families. Like that is what I think. But then also I asked Sarah about it.
Okay.
And I have never heard of this camp, but the camp that was based on was the camp. I asked, where did you go to camp? She said, where did I go to camp or where did I work at camp? She's like, I think the question you have is where did I work at camp? I was like, you just answer the question then you think I have. It's like Camp Emma Kaufman I see some nods, you know it, in West Virginia. Oh, right vibe.
Huh.
Great. It seems like it's an offshoot. It's like the JCC in Pittsburgh sleepaway camp. West Virginia. Morgantown, West Virginia. Okay. Near there. Okay, this is great. Thank you for collaborating. Okay,
yeah.
So we got some things. It's in Morgantown. I want to say like Morgenstern, but that I think is like kosher. There's like ice cream or something, like artisanal ice cream. Anyway, It's Morgantown, West Virginia. It's affiliated with the JCC in Pittsburgh. The vibe I described.
I do want to make one point, which is like very hyper specific, but I started to focus on it, which is there's one point where when they're doing their all night setup, one of the things that Jeremy sets up is sledding, and it's on Shabbat. And he's like, don't worry, I remember to drag some sleds up to the hill already because there's some, in case anyone doesn't want to bring them there are some families that are more religious than others.
Mm-hmm.
And then I was like, but wait. Halakhically, does that make sense? And then I was like, Jewish law. So then I did like a little bit of an internet dive into the Jewish legal question of sledding on Shabbat. And I discovered that I think the major issue is, well, first of all, a lot of people wouldn't do it because it's like an everyday activity. It's just not in the spirit. Mm-hmm. But the major actual legal issue is like carrying or moving something. So like he was half right, but also then they wouldn't be able to sled
down.
Right. So like he brought it there, but then they can't sled. So that was a little
bit of a plot hole.
A little plot hole. Just doing my job here.
As you should.
Right. Thank you.
I don't know that there's any families at Camp Meira who wouldn't sled. Maybe there are.
Probably not. Yeah. Who knows? Why do I? Yeah.
We don't know.
All are welcome, like you said. So.
All are. Honestly, it seems really great. Like I liked it. I like the camp. It's very far away though.
But also Jeremy's like so thoughtful. Like he's really he's
so
the camp.
Thoughtful.
He's thinking it all through.
I feel bad that his like nerdy like it will be epic like thing turns me off because the rest of him is just like he's so thoughtful. It's also like that level of energy is so nice. Like he was really.
He just also like
he was
really
good.
Takes care of her. Like that thing where someone likes you and it's like they're like, here, I brought you a brownie. Like all these little ways that it's just like she's on his mind.
Also, like how dry and crumbly was that camp brownie? Like I could taste it. It has a weird aftertaste, I think. I know the taste of it. I love it in the right moment.
There was a point where they were having like camp breakfast pancakes and I felt like I could taste those camp pancakes with that syrup is very vivid.
I know.
Yeah.
I know the taste. No, so everything you're saying, I agree. I did not think about the sled and the halacha sled. So I'm really happy you brought it up.
Yeah,
really happy you brought it up. But
she got everything right with the orders of like they lit Hanukkah candles before Shabbat candles.
Yeah,
they lit they did Havdalah, and then they lit Hanukkah candles. Like they got all the orders right with the various candle lighting.
The thing is, too, like this was written at a time where there were no Hanukkah romances, and there are we have a whole podcast about them.
And we have, I feel like we've just scratched the surface.
Oh, for sure. We could actually have, like, because after what happened with Molly and I is that after we read our first one or two Hanukkah romances, we did a movie. It was crazy because Jonah Platt came on our third episode of our podcast because he was in Menorah in the middle. And do you know that if you post a story and tag someone, it like goes into their DMs? Like you literally accidentally slide into their DMs. Like, so I posted a story that we were doing Menorah in the middle and tagged Jonah Platt, but then that went into his DMs. Like it was a literal accident. And he wrote back, "You should invite me on next time." And I was like, "We're doing it tonight at 9." And he came on our podcast. So like the first few episodes were Hanukkah focused. And at first, Molly and I, like, we were like, wait, does this have legs? Like, are we going to keep, we should do this again.
First we were like, we're only going to do it for Hanukkah. We thought it would be like a week-long miniseries.
Yes, like 8 nights or something.
Right.
And then we were like, but then if we do another in a week or two, like, should it be another Hanukkah romance? Or should it just be, and then we're like, no, there's all these Jewish romances. Like, basically, like once we scratched the surface, this huge world of Jewish romance books opened up to us.
Totally.
But
there's Purim ones for Purim. There's queer ones for Pride Month. There's summer
like,
camp one. I mean, like you name it.
Everything. And Jewish romance books are coming out monthly. So it was like this amazing world opened up to us. And I feel like the books are more about Jewish, like for me, I feel like they're a lot about Jewish identity more than the romance, or like there's a lot. But this book 10 years ago was the first contemporary Jewish Hanukkah book. So it was like really, it paved the way for all of these books that we've been reading. Like, it's amazing.
It's awesome.
It really is. Hanukkah's so sexy. We talked about this last year, but like it just is like the lights, the darkness, like the lighting, oh my gosh. Like it's just like, it's so sexy. Happy Hanukkah, early Hanukkah, everybody. But I want to ask you something, like, because Hanukkah is over winter break this year, there's a lot of like early Hanukkah celebrations. Like it's why we're here now and not over Hanukkah. Like, how do you feel about celebrating a holiday early? Well, I'm just curious how you feel about that.
Oh, I mean, I'm fine with it, but I do feel like the vibe is on the day. Like there's nothing like, I think it's fine to have something seasonal. I feel festive here with you, but I don't feel like it's Hanukkah.
Right.
Because it's not.
Right. I feel the same way.
Yeah.
Hanukkah's on Hanukkah.
It's like when people have a birthday month. It's like, okay.
Well, I disagree with that.
You have a birthday month, but it's not actually your birthday. You have a day.
Okay. Well, I'll be turning 40 all year, so. But yeah, no, I understand. I mean, I understand, of course.
No, you can celebrate whenever you want, but
for sure.
The day is the day.
For sure. It is.
Right.
Yeah.
We both turned 40 this year.
We did. Happy birthday to us.
Totally.
And happy anniversary to us.
Amen.
The best. No, Hanukkah's so sexy. It was so sexy in the book. And also, this book was PG. PG.
Yeah.
There was
unlike the book last
year. Last year was unrateable.
Right. It was like back of the video store behind the curtain. Yeah.
Completely.
No, that's why when I started it, I was like, what do we have here?
No, but then for me, it's like, first of all, you know how I feel, and everyone knows now about how I feel about the idea of winter camp, but like him, and it opened up a whole world. They kissed again.
Pretty early on, right?
I thought it was later, but I read the book over and over. Like, I don't know now.
Maybe it was halfway through.
It's also a short book, but
right.
They kissed.
Yes.
She realizes they're never going to be at camp again. Literally, the light goes out from behind her eyes.
Right.
Like, she lost her parents in a car accident that she was in, but like this to me feels like.
No, it's like and also especially once he reveals that he was so intimately involved in their death and that whole period. I mean, like.
Very intense. They go home.
Right.
They decide our relationship doesn't just have to live here at Camp Meira.
Right.
We can continue it on outside of camp. She's almost shocked. She's like, it can?
Also, like, he does, part of the reason that this book is rated PG is that there's a couple times where he does the whole, like, no, we can't do this now. It has to be meaningful. I don't want to do this when you're drunk. Meanwhile, like, she had a drink. Like, I don't know.
Yeah, she was like, there's never been wine at camp before, because camp's always a kid thing. But now that it's family camp over winter break.
And we're 25.
There's wine. So she had like a little bit of wine in like the mess hall.
Right. And he was like, no, I don't want to do this. But this has to be special. And then later on again, he's like, no, I don't want to do this just because we're both cold in sleeping bags. And
meanwhile,
like,
do it.
Yeah.
Do it.
I was just like,
Also, like in a tent or like a bunk in a sleeping bag.
what are you waiting?
Wood?
Hello?
Please.
Yeah,
I
exactly.
want to rewrite.
Right. So that's what I didn't. I felt like, okay, like that's sweet and endearing to a degree, but I felt like he took it too
Yes,
far.
because it's like he did, because also it was a missed opportunity.
Right.
The creaking, it's a missed opportunity.
Unless he knew Scott was about to come in.
He could have. And
Right.
also in real life, again, remember,
He did.
it was Adam's dad.
Right.
In real life, it was his dad.
Okay.
I'm just
But in
saying,
the-
I don't know. I don't know if that was part of it, or maybe Sarah intentionally didn't want to write a book that was that provocative.
Or maybe that's what camp culture is like, where really sort of like the real grown-ups are sort of always treating you like, you know, you're sort of under their purview even when you're an
I
adult.
thought you were like, that's what camp is like. There's like, just like no fucking at camp.
Maybe. I wouldn't know.
I don't know. But anyway, missed opportunity for some extra spiciness.
Right.
But their kisses were good.
Yeah. There was a good tension building for sure.
Yeah. There was also like some like her sitting on like a high up dresser type situation.
Yeah.
and him, like,
Oh, yeah. He had to help her
Good
down.
position.
Oh, great positioning.
Yeah,
Totally.
yeah.
Yes.
this is really,
Agreed.
for as PG as it was, there was an attraction.
Totally. You
Yeah.
felt it. Yeah.
And the thing is, she wasn't turned off by his dorky language. That was their language. In fact, the dialogue, Sarah was really good at writing the dialogue, because it's like sometimes you read a book and like you can't actually place who the characters are. Like there's something generic about the way that they're speaking to each other. Like this was the exact opposite.
Totally.
Like you could you know them.
That's why it feels like it was autobiographical, because they
Right.
feel so specific and real.
Right.
Maybe she's just a very good writer. I wonder if this guy, like, I wonder how much he resembles her husband.
Right. Me too.
I guess a lot.
Anyway, so I reached out to Sarah to tell her that we were celebrating 10 years of this book. And I sent her an email like through the website. And then I didn't hear back. And then I saw that she posted on the Smart Bitches Instagram that like her jaw's on the floor because we are reviewing and celebrating 10 years of her book. She's like, first of all, I can't believe it's been 10 years of the book. And the Hanukkah Erotica Book Club podcast is doing an event and my jaw's on the floor. I'm like, her jaw's on the floor? Like, and then Dahlia Adler, who wrote Going by Coastal, probably one of our favorites we've ever read. She commented, this is so cool. I'm like, am I hallucinating? I'm sorry. Sarah Wendell, who's like the reason we're here, writes a book. Dahlia Adler, who wrote one of the best books, they're commenting about how cool
I didn't know
this
Dahlia
is. So,
Adler
like,
had commented.
I
That's really
felt
cool.
insane.
Totally.
And then I DM'd Sarah.
Like, why didn't you respond to
And
my
I
email?
said, did you get my email?
Right.
She's like, I wrote back. I had entered it like GMAI. I was like, the lesser known platform. Like, it didn't even bounce back. Like, I didn't put the L in. I didn't put the L in Gmail. So she just responded to my email, like to the email, and I put in the wrong email address. So she forwarded me the email she wrote us. It was like the most gracious email. She was so excited. She asked if she could send food to the event.
So
and she
sweet.
told us a little bit about the history, which was what I said, which is that she decided that she can't complain about a problem for 3 times without changing it. She said she did work at a camp. She said that the mortuary thing was just because she wanted a challenge, which is like
Really funny.
really funny.
But it wasn't just it was a central plot.
For sure.
Yeah.
For sure. And also like kind of hot.
Totally hot.
Just because you have to be a really specific kind of person to be, it's like all those death doulas out there these days. Like you have to be a special kind of person to just
Yeah.
like hospice nurses, like they're special.
But it was also, he had a struggle too. Like he felt a little bit trapped by like he has to go into the family business. He sort of all other avenues were kind of foreclosed to him. So he was like struggling with it also.
For sure. But being with Bodice, like sorry to go back there, but like he basically was like, do you want to know what happened? And she's like, yes, please tell me everything. So like she's in the hospital after the accident, and then one parent is his dad sitting with one of the parents, he's sitting with the other, and he was saying that like you can feel when you're sitting with a body whether or not they're settled or unsettled, and it was like a lot of detail that was like really beautiful about how like his mom was basically waiting until they knew that Genevieve was okay.
That's what he felt.
That's what he felt.
Right.
Like from the feeling of sitting with the bodies and the soul, like.
Yeah, just very. I mean, come on,
like, come on,
right?
come on.
You can't beat that,
You really can't.
right? Very sweet.
when I first started dating Mitch, my grandpa was dying, and Mitch would come pick me up at his building on the Upper East Side, but he didn't come all the way up because my grandpa was actually dying, he was on his deathbed, and so Mitch was picking me up for a date, but in the lobby, I was gonna meet him downstairs. And my grandpa knew I was going on a date, and my grandma was spying out of the window to see Mitch walking on the street on 72nd. And my grandpa always wore a Mickey Mouse watch, and I was like, "Can I have that?" And he was like, "Only when you're married." So he wouldn't give me the watch. He was taking it off. It was heavy for his wrist. I was like, "Can I have your Mickey Mouse watch?" And he said, "When you get married." And then the day of my wedding, my grandma brought me the Mickey Mouse watch.
Aww,
Yeah.
that's so sweet. I never knew that.
Yeah.
Love it.
Yeah. It was sweet, and also,
well, people are who they are.
he really wouldn't give it to me.
Listen.
But also maybe he was joking. I don't know. All I know is I did not see it till my wedding day. Years went by, I didn't see that watch, and then my grandma brought it. Pretty cool.
Yeah.
But it's being in those experiences when you're getting to know someone, it is really powerful. 3 weeks after that, Mitch's grandma died. It's really powerful. It connects people, and
right. And the way people act in those circumstances really does it for you. Is this going to be my person or not?
For sure. Yeah. Really, really true, and really intense, and yeah, romantic and sexy.
Mm-hmm.
So Sarah was really excited. We emailed, then we started DMing, because then I was like, I feel like I have some more questions. She's going to come on the podcast soon.
Awesome.
Yeah, I'm really excited about that. It was just amazing.
Wait, but I cut you off at talking about the end of the book.
They order pizza and live happily ever after.
Right. Okay. There you go.
Right?
Right. I thought she was kind of incredulous. It felt weirdly like she didn't think that was going to happen, whereas it was sort of hello, you just spent a week, basically acknowledging you're meant for each other.
I know. I just feel like there was this, she couldn't get around. Again, this new adult. There was an immaturity.
She's young. Right.
She couldn't get past,
this is a
can
camp
exist.
life.
This can exist outside of camp.
Right.
It's how I envision, celebrities having a set crush. Sometimes,
yeah.
I don't know.
What happens in camp stays in camp.
Although, some of them end up together.
Right.
But sometimes maybe the fire dies. I don't know.
Right.
But here it didn't, because in real life they're married.
I mean, extending the right.
If it's Genevieve and Jeremy.
Right.
If it's Genevieve and Jeremy.
Right.
But some of it's for sure autobiographical and super sexy, and literally spearheaded and paved the way for stores like the Ripped Bodice and the genre, and it's amazing.
I also do really like how she started off each day with the English date and the corresponding Hebrew date.
Yes.
Which I looked up and was accurate, by the way. In 2014, those dates did correspond with the English dates, so I like that. That's the same thing with the vibe of the day. Hanukkah is those Hebrew days. I just felt like she was really with that. I like that.
For sure.
Yeah.
There was a lot of Judaism woven in.
Tons.
The candles, tons of prayer.
The candles, the prayer, the service.
Also, this really got me in the best way ever. But in the first night of Hanukkah, you say a Shehechianu because it's new. And on the last night, winter camp was over, and they were lighting the 8th night together at their home, having pizza, at his place, having pizza, starting their relationship. And even though it was the 8th night, because they were together, they said a Shehechianu.
Also, how many people do you think were at that winter camp? Because she made hand tie-dyed T-shirts for every single attendee that were given out to the adults and the children. That strained credulity for me.
She was the art specialist.
Okay, but that's pretty special. I wonder how many people were there. I felt like at least 50, 75?
For sure. Yeah. Between 50 and 100.
That's a lot of tie-dyeing. Okay.
It's a lot of tie-dyeing.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, she could do it.
I guess.
She was the art
between
specialist.
that and running around making scavenger hunts, I really don't know.
It's
a very full day.
Were they tie-dyeing their own as an activity?
Oh, maybe she just did the lettering?
I don't know.
It seemed like they were all uniform.
I don't know. But also, the camp shirts, the stickiness of, camp shirts and, merch. Today, I was talking also to Ed at work, who I had to ask for the dick cord. But he was he was like, you got any merch? He loves merch. And I said, we don't have T-shirts. He's like, you need T-shirts or stickers.
We do have a really great logo.
We do. My sister Gal designed the logo. It's really good.
It's awesome.
The Rip Bodice has really good merch and T-shirts and
some
stickers.
good tie-dyed items.
Yeah, and tie-dye items too. But I'm really glad we read it.
Yeah.
And I'm really grateful to Sarah Wendell. I'm really grateful to the Smart Bitches community. And I can't wait to have her on the podcast. We were curious if And last time there was some amazing Q&A. So any questions? Any advice?
We give advice about everything, romance or not.
Anything on anyone's mind that you wanted to bring up tonight? You know what? It's like we have a big TBR, to be read list, but then things come up, something else comes out, we get excited about something, someone will recommend, something will scoot to the top of the list. So we have some things on the list coming up. We want to read a few Hanukkah books. The Love You a Lot, Amanda Elliott book we want to read.
Yeah, definitely.
I started. It's really good so far. We're going to read that. That's here. A lot of.
But also, the Rip Bodice has a whole. They put out a whole display of Jewish romances in the front, and we were looking at it earlier. And there were a few that have kind of been on our, like, sort of hovering on our list for months, but we keep bumping new stuff ahead.
Right. Also, Whisked Away by an Alien, a Hanukkah romance. Guys, I'm not making this up, but the alien has 2 penises. That is not a joke. That is in Whisked Away by an Alien. That's really at the top of my list for this Hanukkah.
Are they at either end of a 20-foot cord is the question.
It's like a body positive, like it's a Hanukkah romance. It's an alien romance. It's body positive, and the alien has 2 penises. Like, it is so at the top of my list.
Totally.
It's available on Kindle. It's available on Amazon. Like, that is, I can't wait for Whisked Away by an Alien. And we were on the Too Stupid to Live podcast, and Becky on that, she told us about Whisked Away by an Alien. Snowed in her boss's bed is one of our favorites. Snowbound in her boss's bed. You're
really
reading it now. So we have a long list of, we just also heard that I Made You Out of Clay is a new book, which I thought, by the way, Auntie S, my sister-in-law, when I first started this shtick 2 years ago, I was making a list of, if I did write one, what they would potentially call it. I feel like maybe I Made You Out of Clay could have been on your list. You sent a lot of potential titles, yeah. You spin me like a dreidel, a lot of potential titles. If you have any, let us know. That's a really good game to play. But the thing that's crazy about I Made You Out of Clay is that I thought it was Magical Meet Cute by Jean Meltzer, because it's about someone who, like, creates their magical man out of clay and makes a golem.
About that too.
Yes.
Oh, interesting.
So I was like, no, I read it. It's called Magical Meet Cute. They were like, no, it's called I Made You Out of Clay. It's another book.
Wow.
About a golem, a dream man being made out of clay. So there's a lot of books on our to be read list.
If anyone has suggestions, we're very open.
Yeah, we're open. But our list.
We've gotten some of our wackier ones from random recommendations.
Yes. People love to slide into our DMs.
The Blue Tent comes to mind.
Oh yeah, the Blue Tent. We read the Blue Tent. That was
Erotic Tales
of the Bible. And that was our most intense and explicit read. There was also some made up words.
Some words we'd never heard. I'll say that.
Never heard them, and they weren't Googleable because they were her own words for body parts.
Right. Which we respected.
Yeah, for sure.
Right. Yeah.
I have my own, so
there you go.
That's if you have your own, we'd love to hear it.
Please.
But yes, if you have any thoughts, questions, we do really love to give advice. But we're so glad you're here. Oh yeah, go ahead. No, that's great. That's a really good question. We've thought about this.
Yes.
You go first.
Well, first of all, we've read books where the Jewish content is minimal and it's really about representation, and otherwise it's more of just sort of a romance of whatever genre it is.
Right.
I personally feel like those conversations are less rich, just because I do feel like a lot of what we're discussing is the Jewish identity as woven into the romance, not really the romance itself. So I prefer when there's more Jewish content, but we have, read some good books that are just representation.
For sure, but I've read a few on my own. I can't remember if someone knows the name, but Funny You Should Ask. Did you read that book? I can't remember the author's name if anyone remembers it. Alyssa Sussman. Like in Funny You Should Ask and her other book.
Oh, you were talking about her recently.
There was one that was like almost like a pop star. I've read a few of her books. Those books to me feel like the main character's Jewish. There's Jewish representation. I see them on lists of Jewish books, but it does feel light enough in terms of the Jewish identity or culture woven in that I haven't suggested it for the podcast. I enjoy the books.
We've also read books, by the way, that have a lot of Jewish content but are not romances.
Maybe accidentally?
Totally, where we thought like there was, Like Olive Days.
Olive Days we thought was going to be something it wasn't.
It had tons of Jewish content. It had a from wife swap at the beginning. But then it was just kind of like I don't know, disturbing coming of age.
It was like more like midlife
else.
crisis.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, it was like a midlife crisis.
There was no real romance.
No. But there was like swirling around in olives as if it were a ball pit.
There was that, yeah. Right, there was that.
There was that.
At Jewish camp.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah. Schmutz is another example. Like Schmutz was not a romance.
No.
So but like that I feel like was like, I loved it. And Felicia Berliner came on our podcast and it was a really good conversation.
Right.
But that was like almost like an accidental. It was a Jewish book. It was not a romance.
It's about a Hasidic girl who's addicted to pornography. We recommend it, but it's really not a romance.
Good, but it was definitely not a romance.
Right.
Yeah.
Also some words I had never heard before.
Really?
Yeah.
That was a funny book because I was in a conversation with like someone work related and I was like, yeah, I've been reading a lot of Jewish romance for a podcast that I do, and a word came up.
Right.
It was spritz. I was reading Schmutz and spritz. And I didn't say spritz. I said something else. Schmutz. I said, I'm reading a book called Schmutz.
Okay.
And he was like, I think that's a really bad word. I'm like, no, I think Schmutz just means like dirt, smut. Like, and I was like, he's like, I don't think it means that. I'm like, I think the word you're thinking of is spritz, which I learned from that book was what it sounds like.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
There was another word in that book that I was unfamiliar with.
Oh, okay.
The Yiddish, there's the word schmeckel, which I am familiar with. I did not know that there was a female.
Schwanz?
Know that there's a female version of that.
Oh, of schmeckel?
Schmeckel.
Can't remember. Do you remember?
I think it was like schmundi.
Oh, schmundi. That was the first time I heard that too.
I learned that word from schmutz.
Yeah, me too.
So there you go.
Me too.
It's an education.
Anyway, so for the podcast, we will read a book occasionally if it's Jewish representation, but it is more enticing and our conversation is better when there's other things woven in.
Yes.
In terms of their Jewish identity, Jewish holidays, Jewish values,
right.
Jewish background. We've read a lot of books where the romance is interfaith.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah.
Which is interesting too.
For sure.
Yeah.
For sure. We also like to read books that will like read a book with an Orthodox background, and then we'll go to a book that's secular, and then we'll go to, we like to read a range.
Yeah, we jump around.
And there's so much. I can't believe it's the gift that keeps on giving, and I feel really lucky to be a part of it.
Totally.
Any other thoughts, questions? Yes. We definitely do make there is a distinction between romance and erotica. The majority of what we've been reading is romance. I think the Hanukkah Erotica thing was like, the name just came out. Like, again, it's 2 years ago. I'm finding these books. I'm like, look at this Hanukkah Erotica I found. Like, it was too good. It just came out. It was just funny, and it just stuck.
Totally.
But the books that we're reading for the most part, Blue Tent was erotica.
Yes. But I can't even think of, have we read other erotica?
Was Eight Kinky Nights by Zan West a little bit?
A little bit, but I mean, I don't know. It was very plot heavy.
Very plot heavy.
Yeah.
A lot of conversation, a lot of snuggling. So
I think Blue Tent was the only book.
Yeah, that was real erotica. Sometimes it's funny. Like, we'll have a conversation on the podcast. Like, we read Olive Days, polyamory came up. We read Hot Lumberjack, polyamory came up. I read that book more, which actually was about a Jewish woman who and so someone DM'd us or sent us an email, and they were like, the book, we're so excited that you're looking for more books on polyamory, and we have the book for you. I'm like, was that the message you got?
We're
like, we did discuss it.
We've discussed it a few times.
But it just, I wouldn't say that we're in like
actively seeking it.
Yeah,
No.
exactly.
Right.
Exactly. But there is a distinction for sure. Like, even here, like, there's the erotica section and the rest is really romance. Like, there's definitely a distinction. Sometimes in the books that are heavy on erotica, there's a romance, but I don't think that there's necessarily a happily ever after. Like, mostly in romances, there's a happily ever after, and in erotica, there isn't always, and it's so much more explicit. And
I also think, like, despite the name of the podcast, also, like, did you write the little description of us, like, a little description of our podcast is like two wholesome stepsisters, something, because I think we consciously didn't want people to think that we're having these like X-rated Usually our conversations are pretty relatively tame, I would say. Like,
right.
We're pretty focused on the Jewish identity stuff and the romance stuff. We're not like dissecting erotica.
Right. I also think that I have a little bit of a higher threshold for like talking about some of the things that, like, if we're listening on audiobook and it's explicit, like, it's pretty hard for Malya to listen to.
I'm 30 seconds.
Where like I like actively seek that out. So it's like I would say that.
Totally.
So yes, for sure. Then that's why we like to clarify that we're just two wholesome stepsisters just reading books.
Right. There you go.
Yeah, exactly.
That's accurate.
Exactly, yeah. We do. It's really fun. It's been really fun. It's been, awesome getting to do this and reconnect. And I can't believe it's been 2 years.
2 years.
It's exciting, and share this with all of you. And it's really so special that we're here at the Rip Bodice. And we're grateful to Sarah Wendell for her community. We're grateful to the Rip Bodice. Are there more questions? Because otherwise I'm going to keep thinking a few people. We're grateful to William, our producer. Mm-hmm. This podcast is brought to you by Newish Traditions and Hanukkah Pong.
Yep.
Thanks for coming, everybody. Oh, should I keep going? I was going to keep going. All right, great. I'll keep going then. I was saying that this podcast is brought to you by Hanukkah Pong, available at newishtraditions.com with promo code Hanukkah Erotica, HANUKKAHEROTICA.
Get it.
Now's the time. Happy Hanukkah. It's really fun to celebrate early with you all. However you feel about celebrating early, we feel really grateful you're all here.
This is William's Hanukkah song that he wrote. It's on the Apple's Hanukkah playlist, if anyone.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.